Welcome to the Top Order podcast. We're going to come at you strong and fast with some Antipodean content here on This Week in Cricket. It's Stu and Baldy at the Rack and Opinion bar. I've full of Rack and Opinion this week after the Australia test against the West Indies. I'm coming off the long run tonight, Stu, after we hit the swish. We're going to cover that series, and we're also going to cover a little bit of New Zealand's tour of Africa in the T20 Tri Series as well. I'm going to pronounce that correctly. All coming up after this little swish. I promised you I'd come off the long run, Stu, and I'm ready for some hot takes after the Australia versus West Indies series. 3 tests in the Caribbean, Australia finishing 3-0 victors in that series, getting their World Test Championship push off to a good start. Where do we want to hit first?
Well, look, I think for anyone who's listened to our England-India preview earlier or review of that third test earlier on in the week, they've seen that we're sort of no shame here at the Top Order podcast kind of outing our Slack comments. And so I think that's the first place to start, isn't it? The fact that I think there was a comment in there before the 27, which we might talk about because I have certainly some New Zealand-based thoughts on the 27. But before that, you threw out a comment that said, if Australia pulls this off, this will be the worst 3-0 series win ever. Are you still standing by that after they just about broke a record?
Oh, I'm 100% standing by that. This is the worst collective performance to win a test series 3-0 that I have ever seen in my lifetime. And I would have to go a long way back in the history books to find a team that delivered such rampant mediocrity with the bat and still triumph 3-0 in the result. We're going to have to give a lot of credit to a lot of bowlers in this series because I think both teams bowled admirably, brilliantly, superlatively. But I think, if I applied my fast reaction brain thinking to the back end of this series and I reflect very quickly and just instant thoughts on what Australia delivered with the bat, their top order was average, their middle order wasn't much better when they got slightly better conditions, and were it not for a couple of really key crucial innings, admittedly low score innings, but real crucial innings, we could have had a very different outcome in at least the first 2 tests. And Australia did just enough with the bat to put enough pressure on in the third test to make the best of the conditions. And, again, Australia's bowlers bowled Australia out of trouble. Australia's batters in the lower order battered Australia out of trouble for the large majority of those first 2 tests. So I think when the teams sit down and have a beer at the end of their series and they reflect on, well, did we give the best account of ourselves? Yes, there were a whole bunch of mitigating factors as far as overheads and surface conditions are concerned and the ball is concerned. But really, could the top 4 have done better for Australia? Absolutely, they could have.
I think it's fair to say they obviously could have done better, but it does feel harsh to say that this throw out those kind of lines like worst 3-0 ever, because I think I guess I'm going to counter this by saying it depends what you think of the West Indies batting. If you think the West Indies' batting is as terrible as it looked, then maybe it's not harsh to criticise the Australians. But if you run through those averages, right, this was a series where we saw 75 was the top score in the whole series. Is that right, Brandon King?
That's right, Brandon King, yeah.
And, there's barely any 50s throughout this whole series. We've seen, West Indies get bowled out for very, very low scores in the 4th innings in every single game. They've been, or 3rd or 4th, their 2nd innings. They've been the top scorer. Nobody's scored over 300 in the whole series. Like this was not a series where you could go and score a lot of runs. And I think that some of those Australian batters, probably the ones that you wanted to stand up, haven't. But I think some of those other ones actually have, and there's been some positives, I would say.
I'm not going to say that this test series is without positives, but if Australia are measuring their standard by the standard of the West Indies players, we've gone horribly, horribly wrong. We shouldn't be measuring ourselves by the state of the opposition. We shouldn't be playing up or down to their level. We should be setting our own standards and our own expectations of how we should perform. And I think that you could make an argument that, yes, we're going to talk about the top order because everyone's talking about the top order for Australia, the openers in particular. But up and down the order, there are circumstances where players either failed to negotiate the conditions, and that's it's not inexcusable. There are certainly mitigating factors for how difficult it was to open the batting in this series. We'll talk about that. We'll set some context here, right? Because a lot of people are piling on top of Sam Konstas, and this is not me coming off the long run to pile on Sam Konstas as well, because I think Australia were mediocre, were average. We were C+ at best throughout this Test series with the bat, right? But it's not Sam Konstas's fault by himself. And we'll get onto the, Sam Konstas being that most unpopular man in New Zealand a little bit later. But okay, Sam Konstas in his first full series as a test opening bat in difficult conditions against, and I want to put it on blast here now, a very good West Indies seam attack. Excellent. Those two Joseph brothers are excellent, and they bowled fantastically, and they bowled with fire.
Sure they're brothers, are they?
No, they have the same last name. They're not. No, they're not brothers. But every time I watch them bowl, I think, oh, it's the Joseph brothers. But they're not. They're
they
not.
Look especially similar.
They're not. They're not brothers. They just have the same last name. But so the two Josephs were excellent. Seals was slippery.
Yeah.
I thought Anderson Phillip came in, did a good job. Greaves did a good job, picked up key wickets and didn't, no one really let the pressure off the Australians, right? There was no one, even Warrican, didn't really let the pressure off the Australians at any stage. So, things to take away positives. Actually, West Indies put Australia under a lot of pressure. And when they did Australia respond and perform? I don't think they did.
That's interesting, because I think at all times, someone stepped up for Australia. I know it's not the guys I say that, but I think you take massive positives about how Cameron Green has come out of the series. He's the one that at the start of we saw the World Test Championship final, and then we saw that first test, and we went, oh, Cameron Green at 3, he's pushing out, and he still did it. I'm not saying he kind of resolved all his technical challenges throughout the series, but he fought so hard. And I think that's such a massive positive. And he got the results. He scored 42 and 46 or whatever it was in this final test. Low scoring test, and really significant. Those scores, they don't reflect how significant those innings were.
No, you're absolutely right. If you just judged Cameron Green by the first 2 tests, right, pretty average performance. But
I think he even showed a bit in the second.
In that third test, his 40s were the equivalent of 80s or 100s if you take into account just how difficult batting was against the pink ball in various different conditions, right? Batting was very, very difficult under lights, and batting was very, very difficult against the new ball. He had to do both.
Yeah.
And so his 40s actually are a marked improvement in his trajectory as a test cricketer and as a number 3. And that's why I'm saying we shouldn't be piling everything on one player. But when you go down the averages, you have a look at the way the Australians got out when they were in.
Yeah.
There were scenarios there where, yes, okay, they did a good job. They got 50, they got 60. They should have gone on. If we're measuring Australia by being the best test team in the world, and we want to put out a batting unit that's capable.
What happened in that World Test Championship final?
That's what I'm saying. If we want to aspire to be the best test team in the world, then we have to be measuring ourselves against a higher standard than fighting 40s or, pretty 60s and then getting out. We have to go on and get big scores, because if we play England and we get a bunch of 30s and 40s in the Ashes, we're going to get our butts handed to us. So while there was tremendous progress from some of our top order, some of those players are going to need to continue to step up and get big scores around the Smiths and the Cameron Greens, whoever's kind of holding it together for Australia. That's what I didn't see from those guys, and that's what I expected Australia to deliver against a team that are not on the same echelon as Australia would like themselves to be. Whether or not Australia are on that echelon, that's where they want to be, and that's where their fans expect them to be. So I thought Australia overall C+ with the bat at best. Yes, there were some tremendous performances, but they also let themselves down in patches.
It is a shame. I really feel like it's a shame that we've got to wait now so long for them to play Test cricket again, because it does feel like these guys need an opportunity kind of almost straight away to go, okay, we're on a better deck. What actually are we? Because did I see even Andrew McDonald was kind of saying we can't judge. I mean, I think he was talking about Konstas. It seemed like it was a question directed about Konstas, but it was more like we kind of can't judge anyone based on the series because, when you look through all those stats, how can you? Because it was so difficult to bat for everyone.
You're right. Look, you're right. You shouldn't judge and define anyone's career by the results of those 3 test matches. But what you can say is that that's not good enough going forward.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my point, right? We can't drop Sam Konstas on the back of, averaging 8 in the West Indies, because if we did that, we should have dropped David Warner when he averaged 9 in the Ashes in 2019. And we didn't do that. We persisted with him for another 4 years afterwards. So if the pass mark is averaging 9 in Test cricket against England in 2019, Sam Konstas is fine. Like, there's no issue there. And like, if you want to put his opening batting performance in some kind of, context, let's have a look at some of the other opening averages. Khawaja averaged 19.5. John Campbell averaged 17.6. Kesey Karti averaged 14, batting at 3. Here we go down the order. Brathwaite averaged 3.75. Mackay Lewis averaged 5.5. Kevlon Anderson averaged 1.5. So, like, there's lots.
Got a couple of good ones for it.
Look, you can't blame Kevlon Anderson. The only thing you can blame him for is the review.
Yeah,
and I think he genuinely had no idea where the ball was, or where. Like, I'm serious.
No, I
don't think he had any idea where the ball was, and it was that good a delivery that it would have got like all of the big 4 either are bowled or dismissed by that delivery at that stage of their innings, having faced 2 or 3 balls like that. That over was the most unplayable over of 3 deliveries that I've ever seen, but it was also a beautiful microcosm of Mitchell Starc's entire career all wrapped into one over, because he bowled 3 unplayable balls, a massive wide down the leg side, and one that he pushed like way across the left-hander, which I think he was trying to push across the right-hander, I should say. And then I can't remember what happened to the 6th ball. But like, it was just like, oh yeah, that's everything you need to know about Mitchell Starc. You can know from that over. It was awesome to watch.
You've segued us nicely there. Shall we talk about Starc? 100 tests. These storylines. They, the world has a nice way of producing these for us. And there it is: 100 tests, 400 wickets, takes 6 for 9, wins player of the match as well. He must have player of the series as well. I think kind of all just there for him. And I'm interested in, maybe not the historical context so much, but just sort of what he's meant for Australia, because he's someone you often talk about in that kind of sense that where you were going before. Like, oh, he's someone you have the Starc radar. If he's on first over, he's on. And then if he's not, then you're like, oh, okay, he's going to get smashed today. But, he's been incredibly consistent. And I think they said 21 times in the first over he's taken a wicket.
It's more than that now. I think it's up to 23 or even 24. He went past Jimmy Anderson a couple of tests ago. And now he's up to, I think it might be even 23 or 24 wickets in the first over.
Out of 100 tests. That's remarkable, really.
It's an amazing record. His career is one, it's almost like a Jekyll and Hyde type of thing. And I joke about having the Starc barometer. You can tell in the first over if he's on, and it's mostly if he takes a wicket in the first over that he's on. But he just complements that other 3 in the bowling attack, and you throw Nathan Lyon in there as a 4-pronged bowling attack. They complement each other so brilliantly, because Hazelwood is metronomic at one end, gives you nothing, makes you play all the time. So if you want to score, you have to score off Starc. So you're looking for balls that are pushed across you that you can slash it at wide, or you're looking for one that swings too much and is down onto your pads and you can clip it away. And really, really good opening batters can take those options. But he's also got the ability to bowl an unplayable ball that looks like it's going to, pass by 5th, 6th stump, pitches on off, and then it's going to hit middle and leg. Yeah. Like that is almost unplayable. And he's just done it so many times for Australia across formats. He's absolutely brilliant. He will go down as one of our best fast bowlers ever. He now joins a very elite club. It's only he and McGrath, I think, that have got 400 test wickets as fast bowlers for Australia. And there aren't that many. I think it's only Lyon and Warne that have got more test wickets than him at the moment. So he's had a terrific career. And I think up until recently probably was an underrated member of that Australian team.
I think so. I mean, I've always kind of thought he's the 3rd one in that, out in terms of who I would be putting on my team sheet first. But then a series like this kind of shows me why he's there, right? To just, because he can knock those first two off for you. Like if he can just come in and go bang, bang, and maybe he only ends up with 2 wickets. But if he's able to do that, it's such a crucial part of a game. And I mean, this series, yeah, as I said, it's important because once you get into this, once you get those first two, things can go really fast. But in any series, right, just being able to pick up those first couple is so crucial.
Oh, it's so crucial, and the fact that like it's becoming even more of a new ball game than it really has been for a long, long time. The state of the balls at the moment, I don't want to keep harping on it, but the state of the balls at the moment are that they go soft early. The Kookaburra loses its seam a little bit. This Duke's ball looks like it goes very soft early on.
Yeah.
And it's gone from being a cricket ball that we could expect to seam and swing for 40 or 50 overs into an innings and then start to go reverse, to being a ball that's useful for 12 or 15 overs and then goes dead for 40 or 50 until you get close to the new ball. So the ability to take wickets early on in your spell before batters are set with the new ball that's doing something is more important than ever. And Mitchell Starc now is the best exponent in the world, I think, of finding that swing. I mean, Jasprit Bumrah is a better all-round bowler, but I think Mitchell Starc is the best exponent of finding that swing. And when he's on, he is now on the Mount Rushmore of bowlers who are the hardest to play when they've got their tail up. He joins the Curtly Ambrose, Stuart Broad, Wasim Akram, Mitchell Starc, Mount Rushmore. And once Jasprit Bumrah gets like 200, 250 wickets, they'll be out with the chisels again, warming it up to put his face up there as well. But yeah, he just goes into that top tier for mine because as you saw in that, 15 balls to get 5 wickets, fastest ever in Test cricket. He could have taken 50 wickets. If he had bowled all day, he could take 50 wickets on that day. And I kid you not, it was just a brilliant performance from him.
The funny thing is, I'm not sure that's an exaggeration. I really think, he bowls, especially with that pink ball, as soon as it goes under lights. I mean, do we want to kind of segue to the guy who's shown again how unlucky he is that he's got these 3 incredible bowlers in front of him in Scott Boland, because he now, with his performance, getting a hat-trick, goes up to 6th on the ICC Test rankings, and joins Cummins, Hazelwood, Starc, and Lyon are also on there. So there's 5 Australian bowlers in the top 10, top 10 of the ICC rankings, which I feel like that has to be a record. If it's not, it can't have been done very often.
No, it must be a record. Surely it must be. I mean, Badgers will hopefully in the comment section tell us how wrong we are, but there can't be a situation where, other than maybe going back, projecting backwards when only 2 nations played, then obviously there would be 2 teams, 5 players each. In the top 10. But he's just so unfortunate to go through his whole career being behind these guys. And Australia are so fortunate. I mean, we talk about the dearth of quality batters in our current system at the moment. And someone asked me the other day, why can't Australia find Test openers? I'm like, we've got 15 guys that can average between 32 and 38 in first class cricket. Like, there's a ton of them. There's just none that average 55. But it's the opposite with the bowlers. We've just got so many bowlers now who are going to go all the way through their career and not really get an opportunity. And what it's going to mean is that if and when those 3, and probably Boland as well, all within a year or 2 of each other, finally go off into the sunset and retire, we're going to have a real refresh of our bowling talent. And it will mean that the 27, 28-year-olds that are toiling away in Shield cricket now are going to come into Test cricket with lots of first-class experience, but very little Test experience. And we're going to have this really fresh-looking, new-looking Australian attack going forward. Hopefully there's a bit of a transition period, but I fully expect Australia to struggle a little bit in the next cycle once those guys all retire, because the guys who have come before them haven't had 15, 20 tests as the third guy. The Chris Wokes, the Gus Atkinson, the Ollie Robinson, just coming in and getting Test experience alongside Anderson and Broad, because Australia have just got 4 of the greatest bowlers I think that they've ever had.
I reckon you might be, saying you might be all right, I think you probably will be, but I think if I'm looking at that Australian attack, I'm not likening it to the New Zealand, but I think about with Bolt and Southey and Wagner all going reasonably. I mean, obviously Bolt was first, but the fact that Matt Henry has kind of stayed on, you're probably going to get Cummins, I would say, be the one who might stay on for a couple of years and sort of shepherd those other ones through. And that seems to have worked quite well for New Zealand in that they've just been able to go, okay, well, we've still got, this guy who can lead our attack, and then we've got these other couple.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it might be quite similar. I almost think Starc getting to the 100, getting 400, being such a good white ball bowler, I wonder if he might now be like, yeah, okay, like maybe another year or two, play these Ashes. I know the Aussies always talk about how much they love Test cricket, and but I in my head am thinking he might be the first one to say, yeah, all right, I'm gonna just play the T20 white ball and ODI sort of formats now.
Maybe they do, but I reckon there's some unfinished business there in terms of that World Test Championship final. Losing that game to South Africa, a game that they would have expected themselves to win, they would have prided themselves on winning. I think that will motivate a couple of those guys at least to not to hang on, but to push on a little bit longer and see if they can rectify that situation going forward. They've started the season with a 3-0 win against the West Indies in the West Indies. Always important to win your away tests in the World Test Championship to boost up your numbers. And if we're going to go into a really attritional 5-test series against England, which I think it will be, with potentially teams getting fined for slow over rates along the way, those two teams are going to take points off each other. So I think Australia getting 3-0 in the West Indies huge for their World Test Championship credentials.
Anyone else you want to talk about from the Australia side of things?
Not really. I think there's a lot of things that we could overreact to, right? I don't think we should overreact to the Sam Konstas thing. I think he's going to have 3 or 4 Shield games when he gets back to Australia before we really need to make a decision about what happens with him. And I think if we're going to pick a 19-year-old, then I think we should stick with the 19-year-old. You know what I mean? If we think he was good enough for Test cricket 6 months ago when he debuted against Bumrah against India in Australia, then he is still good enough at Test cricket. I think you just got to wipe the slate clean from the West Indies series.
Does he learn from this? I mean that in a how do you learn from a kind of series like this as a batter when it's so hard and it might be a long time before you kind of go out into Test cricket in those conditions again?
I think you learn from it by going, well, it doesn't get much tougher than that from a conditions perspective, right? You might face better bowlers. Well, maybe not much better bowlers because those West Indies bowlers were bloody good.
Yeah.
But I'm going to get better batting tracks. I'm going to get maybe a less hostile ball. I'm going to get a less hostile surface the next time I go out to
even
bat.
Bounce.
Or,
so tough.
Lots of different things conspire to make batting at the top of the order very, very difficult. And experienced cricketers like Craig Brathwaite's played 100 tests, really struggled. Khawaja's played a lot of test matches, done a lot of success for Australia, really struggled. And, I poo-poo the Australian batting lineup, but I don't necessarily poo-poo the openers as much because I think that it was just bloody hard to open the batting in those conditions. So I don't think he should read too much into it. I don't think the selectors should read too much into it. But what Australia need to sit down and do and go, right, we need to go big against England in the Ashes. We need to set ourselves up in the Shield, 3 or 4 rounds before the tests to set ourselves up so we can go big, get big daddy hundreds, because getting 60s against England is not good enough. You're going to need to have some guy going in and doing the Joe Root, doing the Ollie Pope and going in and going 170, 180, 200. We need to get back to making that a habit rather than, being satisfied with anyone in the order getting 60 and then going, oh, well, I did a really good job today. I got 60. I think that's what Australia will need to take away from it. I think it's easy to overreact to a bunch of stuff from that Test series. I think it's really easy to overreact to the catching. I think it would be really easy to put the spotlight on Alex Carey because he dropped a few. He dropped a few.
Yeah.
But I think if the ball is doing a bit, it becomes harder for a keeper. If the ball swings after it passes the bat or whatever, it becomes harder for a keeper. So it's not to excuse those catches, but I also don't think we need to overreact to it as well, right? Like he's not in a spot where we're looking at him and going, right, should we put Josh Inglis in as a wicket keeper? I think Australia could easily bat Josh Inglis in that top 6 and still keep Alex Carey at 7 and we'd be fine.
Well, we highlighted how well Carey's been going over the past 18 months.
He's been amazing for Australia.
A couple of episodes ago.
He's been excellent. And, again, in this series, valuable runs. Yeah. He's got to, I set my expectation, my bar pretty high in pretty much everything I do, right? So my bar for Australia is very, very high, but you've got to recognise that Carey's contributions were important for Australia to get either parity with the West Indies in that series, particularly in the first innings, or get themselves in a position where they could set West Indies a challenging total and then bowl well at them in the fourth innings, which we managed to do.
Absolutely. The West Indies getting bowled out for 27. Obviously, that's not very good, and it seems to have then led to some conversations at the West Indies, maybe at board level, or it seemed they are now. If they weren't before, it seems to be kind of crisis mode in terms of the West Indies, at least on the batting front. We've talked a little bit about a lot in the past about getting the best players on the park. I think that's kind of the number one, but then they've just got to find some batters. And I just say that as well and thinking, like, are these pitches? Like, surely that isn't helpful, right?
I think it's, very easy to overreact to the 27 all out, right? But I think what it's going to do is act as a catalyst to have a look at some more systemic issues, right? Are the surfaces that they're playing on, both international standard surfaces and the domestic surfaces, capable of producing batters that can average 40 in domestic first-class cricket? Because from what I've seen of the domestic first-class averages in the West Indies, there aren't guys running around. It's a bit like Australia. There aren't guys running around who are averaging 40 in domestic first-class cricket that are banging down the door saying, I'm making 100 after 100 after 100. Now, they shouldn't produce featherbeds just so that batters can feel good about themselves. They need to be competitive surfaces, but I think there needs to be some kind of balance between bat and ball in that first-class arena so that guys can be coming into the test team with confidence. I think the other thing that I'm hoping that this will do is really have some impetus to have a look at what brand of cricket are the West Indies trying to play in their test cricket, because I think that they've got two completely different brands with the way that they play with bat and with ball. I love the brand of cricket that they play with the ball. They are hostile, they are aggressive, they are at you, they are skillful bowlers with excellent techniques that are putting a lot of pressure on the Australians. And those three in particular, Seals, Joseph and Joseph, not an accounting firm, but they will travel well. They will travel overseas and still bowl well. We've seen that already, right? It's their batting that's the concern. And I was hopeful that when they picked King and Shea Hope in that batting lineup, that they were going to put them, in the top four and really go hard at the opposition, particularly if it's going to be tough to bat. They go, okay, well, if we're only going to survive 40 overs, let's see if we can get 250 in 40 overs and really put the cat amongst the pigeons. They didn't really do that.
I think we saw it a little bit with King, didn't we?
We saw it a little bit with King. We saw it a little bit with Justin Greaves, a little bit, and batting with the tail with, again, Joseph and Joseph in particular. So we saw it in spurts. But I think, you set the tone at the top of the order. And we've seen Crawley and Duckett, we've seen Warner, we've seen Hayden, we've seen Sehwag, we've seen all sorts of players, Jaswell now for India, set the tone at the top of the order by being aggressive. Now, Jaswell's a bit of a unicorn in that he's got a tremendous technique and he can be very aggressive. But if the West Indies are going to lean into anything, leaning into aggressive cricket, I think would benefit their brand, would give their fans something to cheer about, something to like about, something to go and watch them play. And, if they get rolled for 160 once a series, chasing 300 like England do, I think that's acceptable. But if they're just eking their way to 140, 150, like that's the issue that I would try and fix. Don't worry about the 27. That's going to happen to you on occasion. It happened to India. It happened to India and Australia in their last tour. They went on and won the Border Gavaskar in that series. Not the most previous one, the one before that. New Zealand were 45 all out in South Africa and changed the way that they played their cricket. Right, that was a tipping point, not just for that one instance, but for a bunch of stuff that led up to that point that needed to change. So if that's what we're doing, and we're not just sort of treating it as like, okay, we've just got to throw all our players out and then select some new ones. If nothing else changes, then you're going to always do what you've always done and you're always going to get what you've always got. And so I think fundamentally a few things have to change with the West Indies, and I would adopt a more attacking brand of cricket because it's on par with their T20 and their 50-over cricket brand. That is exciting, entertaining cricket. And I'd want to watch that. I wouldn't want to watch the West Indies team play if I was a West Indies Test cricket fan.
We've got to half an hour in the episode. Am I allowed to put my tinfoil hat on now?
Yeah, you can put your tinfoil hat on. I like conspiracy Stu. He's one of my favourite people.
What's Sam Konstas doing at the end there in that fourth innings? 27, is it? You could, the first catch should have taken. Second catch, first one of the catches he should have taken.
The diving catch, you can forgive him for dropping.
Diving catch is tough. Yep. Should have taken the other catch. And then the one that went from 26 to 27, what's going on there? Because every single Australian on the field seemed to have an enormous grin on their face.
Look, Sam Konstas is not going to win any King's Birthday Awards in New Zealand going forward, is he? And he's probably on a watch list somewhere where he's persona non grata and never to enter New Zealand again, at least not without some, thorough searching of his bags on arrival.
Crimes against New Zealand sport.
Look, it's very easy for an Australian to be public enemy number one in New Zealand, but I think Sam Konstas has earned himself a place in New Zealand folklore there, because without his drop catches and misfields, then yes, there would be a new record holder for the lowest score in Test cricket. But if you look at it glass half full, the misfield allowed the wicket to take place the very next ball. So he did speed up what would otherwise have been a very slow, eking out of that innings for the West Indies. And as our old club coach used to say, there's nothing worse than a slow death. So if you're gonna go all out, you might as well go all out with a bang. So I'm putting the glass half full version of the Sam Konstas issue there, but fully appreciate that many Kiwis up and down the country here in New Zealand very, very upset with Konstas, S, and will be for the next little while. In fact, I expect him to cop it next time he comes to New Zealand and Australia too.
I would have thought so. I to be honest, I think that the 26 to 27 one doesn't bother me as much. I think if it was New Zealand's name would have been dragged through the mud even more if they were tied in a way. I sort of feel like that would have been that's not what we wanted. We wanted 20. I mean, clearly we wanted 25, 23, like something just to blow us out of the water.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I wanted.
Okay. Well, I can't.
And we don't get these chances very often.
I can't help you there. Yeah. I really can't help you. And I can't apologise on behalf of Sam Konstas, because I don't think he meant to do it. But certainly not a great look when all the other players around you are just laughing at you. But I guess when it's 9 for 20, you can have a bit of a giggle, right?
I suppose from the Australian point of view.
Yeah, last laugh for Australia. But I really appreciated, and this is going to sound disingenuous, but it's not. I really appreciated how hard the West Indies bowlers competed to keep themselves and their team in this Test series. They deserve a ton of credit, absolute ton of credit.
Definitely.
And while there will be a thorough review of their performance, I think their bowlers can, hold their head high. They wore their arm on their sleeve. They got in the face of the Australians with bat and with ball, and they showed that, they got a massive amount of ticker. I was really impressed.
It's what feels so. It feels like a waste. Feels like a waste for that to have this group of bowlers and to not get the backup on it. So I think from a neutral, from me watching on, going, man, can you just find a couple of batters?
It's exactly how I feel about the Australian batters, because we've got these awesome bowlers. Yeah. And when we lose a World Test Championship final because we can't buy a run, or when we, it's not so much being bowled out for low scores that I mind. It's that we lose like 6 for 90 in a session, or we go from a good position, we're 3 for 150, and then we're all out 220. Things like that bother me. The collapses bother me. And I fully appreciate that. I'm sure that's how West Indies fans feel, because I feel the same way to a certain extent.
Yeah. We done with the series?
I'd like to put it behind me as quickly as possible, I think. Okay. And I'm sure the West Indies fans would too.
All right. Do we talk some New Zealand stuff then?
We could talk New Zealand cricket. What do we want to talk about? Tour of Africa, Tri Series. New Zealand, not box seat, but close enough to the box seat of making the final.
Yeah, I guess so. Couple of games in, play four games each in that T20. I mean, it's very much, you look through the South African lineup, it's very much an experimental lineup for them as well, with a number of, could rattle off a number of their guys that are not there. You've got. But
could you say the same thing about the New Zealand lineup?
I think it was certainly in that first game when we had guys still at the MLC, Major League Cricket, MLC. So a bunch of those guys in that. But now that the lineup we saw in the last game was probably more reflective of what our team might look like notwithstanding a few guys who are not there with injuries and things. But in a way, I think that's a really positive thing for New Zealand, because they've not unearthed, but they've been able to give a few extra guys some opportunities. A couple of the guys in that first game came on and took their chances. Glenn Phillips is now out for the rest of the series and out for the Test series, which will be interesting to see who kind of replaces him in that squad. But I think in general, it's just been nice to sort of see this New Zealand side, see them in action again. You know, everyone who listens to this pod knows that I'm very much a New Zealand fan and want to see them play. But I just feel like this T20 side is actually building quite a big amount of depth, and it feels like a squad that can. I have no idea what our best T20 11 is. And I think that's a good thing. I know sometimes it isn't, but I think at the moment that's a good thing when you're 9 months out, 6 months out from a T20 World Cup.
It's a good thing when you've got options. You know, when you're searching for who's going to be in our 11, we can't really find 11 guys in form. Really, really problematic. But what's encouraging for New Zealand, and what must be encouraging for you, is that guys who are giving an opportunity, a limited opportunity, are making the best of it and showing what they can do. You know, Robinson is a great example, but also, you know, the much maligned Devon Conway came back and scored runs.
He did. I'm not sure that it was the most impressive 59 or whatever he got that he'll ever score. He needed it. He certainly needed those runs.
If you're out of form, runs are runs. How you get them and how hard you scrap is sometimes irrelevant. Yes.
And I don't know, we've been big fans of his on the podcast. I know we had that big chat about him maybe a month ago when the squads were named, and Spinksy, was right, I think, to say he's struggled. He doesn't deserve to be in that squad. He gets his opportunity back in, gets some runs, did get dropped, did balloon a few balls very close to fielders. But again, I'm sure that'll keep him in the side for the next game. And then he gets an opportunity to do it again. And look, I mean, you want to rattle through like some of those names. We've now got in that top order batting sort of space, or even, you know, throughout the whole lineup, we're looking now at Seifert, Allen, Conway, Chapman, Robinson, Ravindra, Mitchell, Phillips, Jacobs, Neesham, Hay, even Mohamed Abbas. Like, that's more than a whole team, I think, of players that Williamson's not, I don't think he's going to be considered, or, you know, is in the mix, is really even putting himself in the mix for T20s anymore. Out of all of those guys, I like I said, I don't know who you would pick. And you've got guys in the likes of, we've seen BJ Jacobs come in. People have been hoping that he gets that opportunity. He comes in. I was very, very impressed with him in terms of, you know, he comes into the innings at 70 for 5 and showed composure at the start to say, okay, well, we've still got quite a long time to go. You know, my instinct is to play with power, but I'm happy to just get myself in, and then started showing off the power. And, you know, Robinson did the same. Again, Robinson was dropped early on, could have been a very different story, but he carries on, sticks in there, scores some runs. And we've seen it with Hay. Again, struggled a little bit, then shows us in the ODIs against Pakistan, here's what I can do in this format. So we've got all of these players now that at least have given us some glimpse of what they can be. And as you say, in terms of options, there's a lot of different ways that we can go, and ways that we can build our lineup in terms of having power players at the end, it certainly seems like Seifert and Allen are going to be the two that they want to be successful, so that they can really get that impetus up front, and then have the Phillips, Jacobs, you know, whether it's Neesham or whatever it is, the power hitters, Bracewell at sort of the end. So they're building a team, although I know that a lot of those names, Mitchell, Ravindra, Chapman, all of those guys are similar names that are in a lot of our formats. They seem to be building a side that is its own distinct thing, the T20s, and it's not really something that New Zealand have really done before.
I think it's really useful and a great shop window for those fringe players to be able to come into this series in particular and drive New Zealand forward, and not just contribute, but actually drive the outcomes, drive the results of those innings. So, Robinson's innings, Conway's comeback innings was very important, I think, and the fact that Bevan John Jacobs was able to show New Zealand what he can offer at the end of an innings is particularly important as well, because it's often been that number 6, that finisher role in the T20s, that's been a little bit of a grey area for New Zealand. Neesham for a while. You've had various guys come in and out of that role. No one's really quite kind of nailed it. So I'm excited to see what local boy BJ Jacobs can do to nail down that spot.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, we've seen a little bit of what he can do for Auckland, and he was able to show that power again. I mean, awesome ball striker. When he hits it, it's good. And he was able to do it. And we just hope he gets more opportunities, because when those guys come in, it was nice to see, like, lots of those guys got rotated out, but the 2 guys who performed managed at least Jacobs managed to stay in the side, and they've both been able to stay over there. Robinson's been kept over as cover for the rest of the series, whereas Neesham and Hay have now gone home. Seems odd to take them over for a week and then send them home, but I'm not paying for the flights, so let's not worry too much about that. But look, it's really exciting. And when you think of all the options that they have with guys like, Ravindra bowled, it was a spin-friendly pitch in the second game, so Ravindra bowls, we've got Santner who bowls, we've got Bracewell who bowls, and all of those are all batters. Phillips is in the mix. It's starting to feel like a team that can do a lot of different things. So, I don't know. Look, it feels silly to be really excited about this, what's happened in 2 games against Zimbabwe and a weakened South Africa side. But, I am kind of pumped up about what's happening to this T20 side and interested to see how it develops over the next couple of months, because the more and more that they build the squad, I think naming 15 is going to be really, really challenging. And even when you look at the bowling side, the guys that are, Duffy again contributes really, really well. Henry, we talk about Henry constantly about how good he is, and he just keeps delivering after delivering. So, it's really, really good. I'm very, very happy as a New Zealand fan at the moment.
It's good to see that you're up and about the fortunes of that New Zealand team. I think they're building tremendous depth in that white ball format, and I think there's potential for some of those guys to transfer that across from white ball to red ball and pick up the mantle from Taylor and Mitchell and Williamson and Latham and Nichols and BJ Watling, and craft a new generation of potentially strong New Zealand batting talent in that Test arena going forward. Any other business before we close out the pod?
No, just hearing you say that, the only other thing is I part of me really hopes that it's Chapman that gets a run in the Test side,
me too,
with Phillips not being there, because I'd love to see how he gets on, really. I think he's done enough to earn that now.
I think upside, he could be the long-term number 3. I think that's the upside value for him.
Maybe.
There's a lot of things that would have to go right for that to happen, but that's the potential upside that you could be looking at, I think.
Yeah, and I have to say I wasn't 100% sold when he first came into the side, and there were a lot of it was around, I think, roles when he was being used. I think that he was being brought in to be that finisher, or just that's where the gap was in the side, and he was the next cab off the rank, so he was brought in and he'd bat 5 or 6 or something in a T20. I don't think that's his go. I think it's clear now that at the international level, top order play is that's where he fits best.
I agree.
And so, I hope he gets a chance in the Tests, because, even if he does slot in at 6 in the Tests, he's got more opportunity to hang around.
Yeah,
so.
I like the look of the New Zealand top order with him at 3 and Ravindra at 4. I think that's a good order going forward. And then you've got real experience in Mitchell at 5. New Zealand might see it differently. They might slide a more senior player up to number 3 and then bring Chapman in at 5 or 6. But it remains to be seen how they'll do that. But lots of exciting things going on in the New Zealand space.